latest from Crytek, published by EA, the first-person shooter, which is known for crashing hard drives and graphics cards around the world. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know if it's midway, but it's pretty good into the story. We're now reaching the point in all Crysis games where, the main enemies are no longer the humans, and it's, now the stereotypical aliens. But they put a little twist on it in the story.
That's always nice.
Yeah, it's a little bit more interesting than, like, regular Covenant. And so here you see I'm using the Predator bow.
Which is sort of like the weapon of like the past year and a half has been the bow, because Tomb Raider was shown with the bow, which is apparently getting really good reviews.
Yeah,
from everywhere.
It's doing really well.
We
should do it.
The Hunger Games and all that sort of stuff, where with bows, and this bow is interesting because you see like there's the thermite tips, which is like explosive. There's like shock tips, which like dudes just standing in water and you can shoot the water like shock dudes, sort of like Bioshock.
Yeah. And what's cool though is they also have different draw distances.
Yeah.
And I think you can do this in multiplayer, I'm not sure. But if you guys remember back in Half-Life 2, they had like the crossbow sniper combination, and that pinned enemies up against walls. And if you pick the long draw type, you can actually do that here. And you have to press a button to pry the arrow out and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that is brutal.
Yeah. And so it in single player, it doesn't reduce your energy by... that should have been a stealth kill. That's a load of shit.
That was bullshit.
Yeah.
But in the single player, it doesn't reduce your enemy to shoot arrows, but in multiplayer it does, so it kind of balances it out.
Uh-huh.
And you see those little arrow depots there, so you're always you want to be resourceful with them.
You're always sort of supplied with them. So, something that... well, obviously Crysis is known for its visual prowess, and Crysis 2 was really sort of knocked for because, the first Crysis had like a 90% piracy rate, so they decided, well, we'll release it with a more of a console-focused, and as a result, Crysis 2, we'll be able to get more money, and people criticized it for not being as, the fucking
such
graphic
a benchmark
powerhouse that it was, and so... You're playing on low, and, it's still looking mighty impressive.
A good thing to note about this is I usually run it like medium and 1080p high textures and stuff. And so the issues with this was I thought was, I first got the game, and thanks to a friend, and I loaded up the first level, and it was just a nightmare. It was so laggy on everything. So I was turning it down, playing with different stuff. And once I got into these areas, it really, really stepped up. And, you can always turn, if you don't have any issues with it, you can always, play the game on ultra just fine, 720p. But, I really like the crisp, regardless of all the particle effects.
Right.
So keep it on 1080.
So what we're seeing right now is the weapon customization. That's something I always like about Crysis games, is that it's very much so, you have your weapon and you can change it on the fly. If you want to make a stealth kit, you just go ahead, swap out, put in suppressors, put on really good sights, put on ammunition relevant to it, and this Crysis has always had this sort of really interesting mix of, you can approach the challenge how you see fit, whether it's stealth, balls out, guns blazing. But from what I've heard about this game, if you on the higher difficulties, you pretty much have to go at complete stealth with the bow, from what I've heard.
Well, I mean, as someone who's played like 6-7 hours of the game, I definitely agree to that. At some point, you can do that. So, for instance, right here, I'm using stealth loadout, predator bow, trying to hack stuff. I had a failed hacking a couple of seconds ago. And for this, I'm using like a 12 gauge, but it's more of a long range shot. But you can easily have firefights. You can easily go into armor mode. You can easily customize your upgrade stuff to be stronger.
Oh man!
Can I point out real quick that this does remind me a lot of the Predator sections from the Arkham games?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the first Crysis and what that was all sort of about, which was, a big open environment, and it's sort of changed to being a bit more linear with open areas. And it seems like in Crysis 3, at least, they sort of match this. There's some linear areas, but then there are really big, sort of open like I said, approach it how you will, which sort of seems to be the Crysis motto, is approach this fight however the heck you want.
Yeah, and what's really cool is because, well, a lot of people were having issues with Crysis 2 because it was definitely a lot more linear game. And, there's counterpoints saying, well, we ran it on the consoles. It was our first console Crysis game, and we needed those linear corridors to improve performance. And Crysis 2 worked really well single player. There were still areas which opened up and stuff. Mm-hmm. But Crysis 1 was definitely, the crowning achievement of those two games in terms of open gameplay. Mm-hmm. But Crysis 3 really opened it up. So you get these areas where you kind of get to explore, and there's side parts of it, like there's little side optional missions.
These big open sections you can just tackle any way you want.
Yeah, and they're plentiful. There's tons of them.
And that's what's really cool about what was described in this game is that it's this this jungle that is what New York has been turned into, which is that's kind of cool for they always talk about like New York is like a jungle or something, and this is very much so. Now you're in this very natural area. Yeah, so I like how effective the environment seems to be.
That's I didn't think about that.
It's great. Well, another really cool thing is there's a part where you have to blow up the dam, and you get to see a lot of that during they were showing tech demos, and they're like, oh, this is the dam, and there's multiple ways you can go about it. And there's a lot of ways you can go about it. You can swim around behind the dam and try and take out your objectives, or you can shoot in and go through like little opening covers, kind of like Deus Ex. And what's really cool about that is the second the dam breaks, you're seeing a lot of animals. You're seeing a lot of rabbits. You're seeing a lot of squirrels. You're seeing a lot of crabs. You're seeing a lot of deer try and escape with their life. And although there's obviously always going to be some AI issues, but some of them would run into cell agents. But as we see here, you don't see any enemies, but you kind of see this deer trying to escape right here.
Yeah, and you still see the glowing footprints.
Yeah, your suit still tracks it.
And that's part of the augment system, which is something I liked. Which is something that really sort of sets this game apart from other first-person shooters, is that you really sort of build your you build your nanosuit to fit how you want. You build your weapons to fit how you play, and you customize it through these little skill trees how you want, which is just you don't see those in every first-person shooter, which is
you don't see that kind of
cool.
thing in single player at least.
Oh yeah.
No, you never see that in the first-person shooter's single-player campaign.
No.
You see that kind of customization in multiplayer all the time, but in something like this, you don't get a lot of that. It's really kind of cool.
Which is what I really like upon Crysis 2 and Crysis 3 is, as you see here, we just walked by that turret. They didn't have those in the second or the first game. No. So they're really adding to, being more resourceful, and those definitely kill you really quickly. I think I die right here by one, actually. But in the first two games, they didn't have any of that kind of customization. I mean, they had prone and stuff, but I don't think that really counts. The second one had, and they did that really well with, hand augmentations and stuff. And, you pick them up from the aliens. And that was really interesting. But in this one, it's more you pick up nanosuit upgrades that you find.
Just little upgrade kits. Sort of like practice kits in Deus Ex.
Yeah. And those work really well, actually. And you can level those up by being more playing more stealthily would make stealth perks work better. Yeah, which is pretty cool.
It's like this pseudo RPG-esque without being blatantly RPG. And there are a lot of games that that cross the line between RPG and first-person shooter. There are always going to be games that sort of blur that line. And Crysis has done a really good job of just being a first-person shooter with a lot of customization to your character without being an RPG, although it sort of feels like it in the amount of customization.
Yeah, and you can still play stealthily even if you put all your nanosuit upgrades into armor and stuff.
That was just excessive there.
Poor guy.
I thought he was alive. They actually play some dead cell agents, and some of them are after the aliens attack after this scene, they actually have some of them struggling for their life, which is pretty cool. I also want to note that, although you don't see it in this gameplay so much, the facial animations are just incredible.
Oh yeah,
they look so real.
Yeah, the screenshots are what's crazy. I mean, I think I talked about in the podcast last Saturday about those Titan graphics cards and how 3 of them you do 5760 by 1080 with Crysis 3, which is just ridiculous. So we we're talking about, you know, the solidness of the gameplay and, you know, the good visual style, and, you know, certainly those are two very good things, but how's the actual story of the game? You know,
Well, did you guys play the first two?
I played the second one, and I have a pretty good idea of what happened in the first one.
Well, the first one, spoiler alert, but well, no spoilers. We'll keep it pretty simple. So here's me. You guys are all in the same spot. You can still take that a point as long as you manage your armor abilities.
Yeah.
Which is cool, and you can kind of switch between armor and stealth, which I do a lot actually.
It's nice to be able to go all Rambo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can even go all Rambo and like stealth at the same time, which is kind of cool. Like you can quickly and loudly take out one section. But anyway, back to where I was going with the story. You know, the first one was kind of interesting because it was kind of like a lost feeling. Like you're on this island, you don't know what happens, and you're kind of sneaking around, trying to, you know, taking advantage of the nanosuit, seeing what it can do, playing with vehicles and stuff. And then the second one, they kind of push you into this, like, it's really cliche, where it's like, you know, the aliens have come, and I don't remember the whole story per se, but it's like the aliens have come, you're part of their suit, and you're trying to take them down from the inside.
If I remember correctly, you were basically, your own DNA was like sort of fusing with alien DNA at some point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, like, we're going back to Deus Ex here. There's a lot of characters in Deus Ex are like, you know, I hate technology and people and them coming together, you know, in this sort of, like, biological fusion. And it's the same way here. One of the main characters is just, like, does not like that you've been infused with this, like, I think they're called the Seth DNA. And so there's a lot of cool interactions with that, and you get to use a lot of their weapons, and they do a lot of interesting story arcs with that. But, I mean, I guess you could play it for the story, but I think it's definitely just playing it more for the atmosphere. Like, you're experiencing New York City.
You're playing it for the gameplay and the feeling of the gameplay, and you know, the story is, it's there, it's present, but it's nothing right mom-ho about, you know.
There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's fine to base your game around something that isn't just a narrative.
As long as it's really strong, you know.
Yeah, which it is. They're getting like a hell of a lot out of the atmosphere they're throwing into this game. It just feels dilapidated and like a frickin' war zone.
Yeah. And this is just the nighttime scenes. In the daytime scenes, they're kind of more desolate, and, you know, there's a lot of characters that are like, this sucks, I'm going home, kind of deal. And there's funny little dialogues and everything.
And that's something that I kind of like in first-person shooters, that, you know, some do, some don't, where, you know, you have soldiers that will, like, you know, just babble about, and they have really interesting chatter. And I remember having some interesting chatter in Crysis when I've played it off and on.
Well, the chatter isn't so, like, super interesting, as I would say. Well, sometimes it is, but other times it's just, like, AAA humor. Like, you would watch an action movie, and, like, for instance, one person would be like, any more questions, scrubs? And they'll be like, what's the meaning of life, sir? And it's just, like, banter like that. But yes.
There have been some good shooter moments with some little, you know, marine chatter or something like that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Again, like, the Modern Warfare games are good for that. And also the Bad Company games.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Bad Company 2 chatter.
Yeah. Just having all the characters just yell at each other.
So we just saw some sort of giant alien digging death worm machine pop up in a pretty, you know, first-person shooter-y set piece moment that, you know, as a Gears of War fan, I'm laughing at that going, that's a tiny-ass worm. But, you know, because, you know, there's that worm that you chainsaw your way out of by cutting its heart open.
Giant
that was awesome.
They're sinking cities with a giant worm! That's what Baird ever said. I'm coughing up blood that ain't mine. This ain't right.
God, that was...
I love that part.
Crysis 3.
But, yeah, I mean, a lot of the set pieces in this are really big, but it's more just like a... What I really like about Crysis is, although, like, some of the set pieces can get really big, there was a lot of really, really big set pieces in Crysis 2, that they kind of always bring it back down to, like, the ground point. Whereas Call of Duty, sometimes the ground point would be kind of irrelevant, and, like, it'd be, like, the over-arc, like, where you are type deal. Where this is more like, let's more focus on the personal interactions between the player and the enemies within, like, this large infrastructure, instead of just, like, having shit blowing up in the background.
Bring the scale down. You know, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
but it looks great. Like in some of the larger, well, in some of the earlier portions when it's daytime, you look up and it's like 30-story buildings just all around you.
Uh-huh.
And you can kind of jump through them and hunt your prey from that angle as well.
Are you teabagging that guy? Oh.
I don't think so.
He's just getting his energy back, it seems like. And, you know, what you're sort of doing now is you see how these guys have these little yellow arrows over the head, which is something I always found kind of, you know, it seemed like it'd be cheating, but when you look at how the gameplay executes, it makes total sense. And it's that you have like that little visor you pull up, which allows you to mark ammo, allows you to mark enemies, so you can track them movement-wise.
Well, and the arrows are an upgrade as well.
Yeah.
So they don't give you that unless you buy it.
And I always love when a game allows you to, you know, go out of your way and plan. And this game definitely has always let you do that.
Yeah,
oh, man.
It's really cool. And like they'll put like certain weapons there, and you can see them where you dropped. And if you open up your visor, you can see where like arrows you shot are if you need to refine them.
They went to that level of detail?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, you can pick up all the arrows you shot, like I just did, and you can do the same in multiplayer as well.
Okay.
But like it'll pull up on your hood.
Now that pinch rifle that you're walking past, that's a power weapon in multiplayer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's a couple power weapons. There's like a flamethrower or a rocket launcher.
And there's a sniper rifle, I think.
Yeah, there's a sniper rifle.
I could be wrong.
But they're not like you don't get a lot of like motion mobility with them.
Oh, okay.
And you can go in stealth and stuff, but there's so many people going in stealth like all the time that the nice thing is like the stealth doesn't last long enough. Like it'll last long enough if you're waiting and you're like waiting for something to happen or you're stalking your prey. But you can't be like an aggressive stealth player. Like unless you want to like go into armor mode and then switch out. But like if you're just rushing, like you lose your stealth really quickly.
Yeah.
You're just going to be forced into combat.
I definitely noticed that.
What'd you say, Jack?
Does being in stealth also make you easier to kill? Because I know there's an award in multiplayer for killing a stealth enemy.
No.
Yeah. Well, it does make you weaker, but only because...
It's weaker compared to, you know, having armor mode on.
Yeah.
It's really easy to kill you if you don't have armor mode on, which is why in multiplayer you can change your perk system and change it so your active armor doesn't come on, but you're like stealthier.
Alright, so you can trade off. That's pretty cool.
And they made a big focus of that. Like, I remember reading articles about the first Crysis back in a PC gaming magazine I read, and they talked about how, you know, the character could go from scoping out an area to stabbing a dude in the throat to hopping down an area, throwing a car at someone, coming in armor, ripping off a turret, and shooting people to death with that same machine gun turret, and stealthing off into the distance. And it worked completely seamlessly. And
you can still do that in this game. There's not as many vehicles though.
Yeah, it's like they sort of took out the whole like super strength, and they sort of, you know, made it you know, you can take bullets and you're really focused on stealth, and you know, you could argue that gives you less variety, but then it allows the developers to focus on making a really good stealth experience and a really good effective armor experience.
Yeah, and honestly, you can still kick cars off of ledges and hit people with them. So
yeah,
they didn't totally abandon the whole super strength.
Yeah. And, well, the interesting thing is, like, armor is kind of, like, combined of, like, strength and speed and stuff like that. So if you put armor on, you're going to be faster and you're going to do stuff like that. And stealth is more just like, well, it's stealth. Armor is just more of, I don't want to say streamlined because that's bad, but, you know, well, here we see the stuff right here. Here we see some of the skill trees.
That is extensive right there.
Yeah. They went for, you know, seriously allowing you to create your own super soldier, which totally makes sense to me, dude.
Yeah. Well, we're closing off here, actually.
In about 30 seconds,
Yeah.
So, what do you guys want to say about Crysis 3?
Well, from what I've played, I kind of want to give it a review. And 7, I want to say like 7.5, because I haven't played enough and I haven't beaten it. But it's definitely a solid game, and 7.5 to 8 is pretty good, I think, out of 10.
Party.
All right. Yep. Thank you much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That was Crysis 3 from Midnight Launch. Robert, Jack, Michael, thank you for tuning in. See you all next video.
Farewell.